I've just realised I started the show while completely muted. That was my bad. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the CSGO post show. We are off to a flying fucking start. We have all walked the road to Rio. Some have walked further than others, and I've assembled the post show panel to break down everything that we've seen across all three of the super regions as we build to IEM Rio. I'm the EternalJay. I'm the eternally poor, given the medical bill I just received this morning, and I'm joined by three very equally depressed individuals, at least in the case of one of those guys. I'm joined by two of my compadres from last time during the Pro League post show. Retro and Trav are with me, of course, as per usual. Retro, how are you doing this afternoon?
Oh, mate, I couldn't be feeling any better. Nothing with my day has gone wrong so far. I'm fueled with happiness, and I'm ready to talk about Counter-Strike. Isn't that what we're all here to do?
Oh, yeah, 100%, mate. Although I do have to admit that you yourself...
No.
Why are you doing some driving this morning, Retro?
Yeah, mate, yeah. Listen, it's a depressing day in the office. Like, let's steer clear of the puns. You know, let's move away from everything to do with the test. I'm here to talk about some Counter-Strike today. Honestly, I could cry on stream. It would be great content. There's a chance. There is a chance.
Bad day.
Well, listen, I'm sure we'll have to put the brakes on some of the teams that have made it through to the RMRs, and I'm gonna put that shit on the fucking podcast all day. So, Retro, of course, I'm glad that you joined us. I'm sorry for your loss of a certain extent, and I'm still glad that you stand up for us here to discuss Counter-Strike in the RMRs. Trav back for the umpteenth post show in a row. Late as usual, though. He joined us 20 minutes after the call time. So, how are you? How are you doing today?
I was having lunch, mate. Sorry, I didn't want to munch on mic. That's that. I was doing it for you, not for me.
Meanwhile, Retro's eating his comfort food.
Mate, I was inhaling my cheese toasties while we were waiting. I'm not gonna lie, fella.
Yeah, Retro is legitimately triggered this show. So if you're looking forward to a rant or two, then you might be able to get it. Scriv couldn't join us this time around, so I've had to replace him. I've kicked him out of the cool kids group, and I'm joined for the first time ever by BDog on the show. Yeah, quite literally, he's out of the channel. BDog, of course, casting. Wow, I'm all over the fucking place today. he's been casting the B stream alongside me and Dwayne and Lucy over the course of the RMR. So I think the biggest thing you've done in your career so far, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was exciting to watch some of these teams just kind of stop at the red light, weren't allowed any further to Rio, and then some had the green light and allowed to book their ticket in. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it all. Aren't you, Ryan?
Fuck you, man. Fuck you.
He's really going. That's a lot deeper than I expected.
You know what? No, I need the floor here, right? I failed because I didn't stop in time for a red light, and the test guy had to stop for me. Okay, let's get out of the way. There you go. Elephant in the room. Smiles all around. I'm glad. I'm happy. We're here. Let's talk Counter-Strike. Yeah.
If you're new to this show, we PM the fuck out of each other, so expect more of this as the show goes on. But
mate, Dwayne's in the chat saying you suck. Shut up.
Should have had Dwayne on the show. That would have been great. Right, but we are going to talk about some CS, of course. We always like to do so. And we're going to go through all three of the regions of the RMR to bring you up to speed with what happened over the course of the week, to give you the details, the rundown, the analysis, the hard-hitting comedy, and, of course, the results that we will be seeing, of course, going into IEM Rio. So let us begin, shall we? We'll start with the Asian RMR, just the completion stake. I haven't really got a lot to say about this one, boys. I'll be honest with you. We saw IHC, Greyhound, Reratim, and I'm not going to try and pronounce this name, play in the Asian RMR. IHC and Greyhound make their way forward. Outside of Reratim maybe losing out, I haven't really got much else to say about how this whole thing played out. So I'm just going to kind of open the floor to you guys if there's anything that you want to say about this tournament.
I'll say that I'm disappointed in Reratim because I actually really like the team. Advent is the real Giga Chad, in my opinion. He's even worse than Hooksy, bless his soul. He's older as well. So, you know, I thought that he'd actually make it with Reratim. I think it was probably, I think everyone in, I think Neo's picks and also the Not Out Here podcast picks. I think they all picked Reratim to go through. I was confident in that as well. I didn't expect Greyhound to be as good as they were, to be honest. Australian CS has always let me down. really, when I've picked them in the past. So, yeah, GG How International are actually even better than I thought they were going to be honest. But yeah, I think in the end, IHC deserved it. They are terrifying aim stars, really, across the roster. And it wouldn't surprise me if they get one of those sneaky maps in the major again, to be honest, and go like 1-3, or just to annoy everyone's picks, like last time.
Yeah, pretty much. Ryan, you got anything to add to that?
No, I was watching the streams and I think it was really interesting. I must admit, on the RMR specifically, how cool I've got to give it to ESL for the production and the value and what we saw on that stream. We had some really good games. The casting was unbelievable, by the way. Like actually watching that stream, it honestly, I had goosebumps at
That
some
Vertigo
points.
game.
Yes, yeah. Round
Yeah,
29 on the Tech 9 1v2. Like, or the 1v1, yeah, it was insane. I really enjoyed watching that. Although I didn't get the most time spent watching the Asia Pacific one, I think I would have liked to seen Gigi Hao in the actual event, right? I think for Mestal, Moore, and Blue Phoenix, we kind of seen them in Europe a little bit. Obviously playing with Face Crack and Davcost, it would have been nice to see those names back as well. But Greyhounds, I've got to give it to them. That was a pretty decent run. You know, the fact that they were able to run out Rare Atom in the opening BO3, I think caught a lot of people off guard to begin with. And then obviously losing to IHC, very, very close to maps there. And then obviously going on to beat GG House. It was a really interesting watch.
Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't see much of the Asian RMR myself, obviously, just because of time zones and other things. Of course, with us sort of doing the European side of the broadcasting, it was a bit more difficult to keep up with it. I will say it's cool to see a bigger crowd than ESL Pro League down under. So there's always that to add to the credit of what ESL Australia were able to do with that whole thing. Yeah, look, from an event perspective, it was a good one. Unfortunately, it was a very small one, and I don't think that I don't think that anyone really had much attention drawn towards this one overall, just because of how small it really was. I know there's a bigger conversation about how fucking like we want to see more spots for Asia, and I have to ask, you know, is that like a valid sort of thing to discuss given what we've seen in this RMR in the Asia Pacific region?
I feel like the teams were quite competitive against each other, right? I wouldn't be opposed to like a third or a fourth spot coming in. I feel like for me, when you talk about major cycles, you talk about the journey to kind of get there. I would always want more teams at the major naturally, so I'm always going to lean a bit more in. But I was very impressed with kind of the caliber of the competition, right? I was impressed at the fact that Rare Atom, everyone expected them to do really well, and they bombed out, and it was because the competition really elevated in that region. So I was very impressed and pleasantly surprised with how it actually all panned out in the end.
Okay, cool. Is that all for the Asian RMR? Again, I didn't really think there would be much to say overall, so...
Nah.
Yeah, I think had it been a bigger event, we could have probably paid a bit more attention, but just the fact that it was so small, the fact that there were only so many teams and there was only so much to discuss, and the fact that also that it was like 1 o'clock in the morning for us, we haven't really got much to add in that sort of sense,
I'd say one thing on it, and I've just seen Dweg say it as well, is the fact that we only have 4 teams in this RMR. Personally, I'd love to see maybe 8 teams, and maybe you do like a ESL Challenger League system, right, where you play like BO3s. It's like you know, you play till you win 2 or you lose 2. So it's kind of like a mini Swiss stage. Top 2 teams, you get seeded into a top 4. And it would just be nice to have a little more competition, because I think if you look at the Middle Eastern qualifiers, we actually miss out on some pretty nuts players. I think of NASA, right, coming in from the Middle Eastern quali. They didn't make it just because obviously it was Gigi Hao that took it. From the Chinese qualifier, obviously Rare Atom were always going to be the cut above. But you
Wings
think
up.
We had Wings Up, Lin Vision, and Tai Lu. There's like some pretty big names that we're kind of like missing out on. And so I would like to say keep the 2 slots entirely perfect for me, that they get 2 contender slated slots. I don't think that's up for much argument. I would argue the amount of teams though that play in the RMR should definitely be increased for the next major cycle.
I think we can all get down with that, honestly. Like, you are right about that. I remember like me and Dwight were discussing how OG was struggling against Wings Up over the course of their run in Challenger Melbourne. So there are those situations where you could see Asian teams pull off those upsets, and if they're able to make their way to the major, that can make things more interesting from the Asian perspective. So yeah, I can get down with that whole idea of increasing places in the RMR. I think that might actually be the fairest example that you've described there, Retro. So Valve, ESL, Blast next season, make it happen. You know, there's no reason not to have it sort of happen, that sort of of sense. So, yeah, there you go. Asian RMR, not much to discuss at that point, so we'll move on very quickly. Again, just wanted to cover it for completion's sake. The big guns really were about Europe and Americas here, because those were the two regions that were the most stacked. They had the most teams, they had the most things to play for. Of course, 16 teams per RMR across 3 RMRs overall. We'll start in the American region. Just because, really, Furia, Imperial, Liquid, those are the guys that came in from the Antwerp Major. Then we had some highlights like Complexity, MIBR, Evil Geniuses, Pain, and 9Z, all coming in from the open qualifiers. So this is what the Swiss stage looked like. E.g. Liquid, 9Z, 00 Nation, Furia, Complexity, Imperial, and Pain made it in as our top 8. The other teams were able to be eliminated. I guess for MIBR and Team 1 on name value sake, they probably may have bottled this one. Yes or no, guys?
I don't know. I think they were always an underdog either way for me. And the only team that I'm sad that genuinely sad that didn't make it was Pain. I think Pain was, well, actually, to be fair, I'll probably talk a little bit about Complexity in the Imperial match, which was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
But one of the teams that I did really have high hopes for was Pain. After their performance at Melbourne, after the numbers that Zevi and Skulls have had recently, they've been, just the two youngsters that have been most impressive, I think, from that roster. And I think in the end, it's just down to, realistically, Imperial, again, being, the gatekeepers. These guys have all the experience in the world, in Americas, in Brazil, and they just stop these new teams at the last stage of actually making it through. So, yeah, I wanted them to make it. I predicted them and Cole. And I did say, I think that 9Z 00 Nation were sort of like, I would change my picks between different pods, to be honest, because I just couldn't pick whether they would make it or not. I really did like 9Z and 00 Nation. I was very impressed with them. And as we said, we'll get onto Imperial Complexity, but yeah, I'm sad for Complexity because they were honestly insanely fun to watch as well.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of struggles for Imperial over the course of this one, and I do think that their run overall is probably the most concerning of them all that made it through in this top 6, just because of how many teams they had to struggle against. And even that Complexity matchup, as much as everyone was super excited to watch how heart-stopping that was, I don't think you can say it's the cleanest CS. So for Imperial, I guess that they have to kind of be a little bit glad that there's going to be an audience at the Challenger stage, because I don't see them making it much further than that, honestly, guys. It was very scrappy run for them in the Americas side.
I'd go up here and say as well, maybe 80k, a little bit disappointing for them. They're a side that I think a lot of people will overlook. We have some European blood, Bodemaster and Spray. So we have a Swede, obviously, in the active roster, and an Israeli in the coach slot. For them as well, I was looking at their run so far, right? And if you look at the teams that they got put against, it's savage how the seeding worked for them, right? They played against Complexity in a best of 1. They obviously played Arctic and MIBR, and the MIBR game on Dust 2 I thought was a pretty interesting one. 16-8 is a really respectful scoreline, and in the 2 best of 3s that you get, it's against 9Z and Pain. Really, really painful to see that those guys go out the way they did. If I'm honest, it would have been really cool to see them through. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can argue with the 80k side. They definitely gave some bigger teams a run for their money. You have a look at maybe the score lines, don't really reflect how well they did. But when you consider the names of the teams that they're playing against, I think we expected a little bit more out of Pain. Probably 9Z as well with that side, how they've been looking have been decent. And the fact that you draw Complexity in the first BO1, it's just a savage turn of events from them. And I think if you get more middle of the pack matchups for 80k, you'd probably see them in place of maybe the Pain or the Imperial.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you come from with that in the sense of 80k. I mean, I wasn't certain that this would be a roster of players that would have been able to do much personally. I have a little bit of faith in Bodemaster being able to elevate this squad, but that, as you mentioned, it was always going to be a tough draw. And if I had to pick 6 teams that would have made it through with this RMR, I don't know if 80k would have been there in that particular lineup, honestly, boys. It was tough for them, and I guess it kind of sucks to a certain extent. But I feel like when you consider who we actually had in this RMR, when you see the teams that were able to top out, like EG and Liquid and 9Z and all that, those are the teams that you expect to be able to make it forward. So I'm not sure it's that out of the disappointment sort of realm. I can give them a little bit of credit in that sort of sense for us, Retro.
Yeah, the only reason why I'd say, I guess, is because if you look at the matchups that they lost, they got probably some of the worst luck in the Booker roll system, right? So it hurts. It hurts to see, but that's why the cookie crumbles. I'd like to say as well, massive disappointment from Complexity. I know it's a bit of a discussion that we're going to have later down the line.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
What a great sixth place matchup that was. But I've got to give it to Imperial, as Trav said, although, and as you're saying, Jay, it's nice that we get a crowd for the Challengers stage. These guys, they don't look like a team that are going to make it through the top 8, through the first Swiss stage that they have to play. It would just be nice to see if they can win a BO1 and see how nuts the crowd goes.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing as well, right? Because they will have been under so much pressure, not necessarily even from Brazil, because they've had pressure from Brazil their entire career, right? They've had them on their shoulders for what, like 20 years? I don't want to say at this point. Well, 20, that's a bit too much. 15 years probably at this point, and they've been known in the scene. And yeah, I think knowing that is a huge amount of pressure, but I think honestly they'll have put more pressure on themselves other than the Brazil itself to get through, and the pressure to make the Rio Major, which it could be. I mean, everyone's calling it hashtag the last major, hashtag the last dance.
It's not going to be the last major if they can help it, boys. Let's be honest.
No, exactly. That's the point, right? So, but realistically, they're not getting any younger. Fur and Fallen, both in the 30s. That's the reality of the situation. Who knows what the future would hold for them? So making this was of huge importance, more than probably any event they've ever played in their entire career, which really does say a lot, I would say.
I feel like as well that can kind of really account to some of the scrappy nature we saw, especially right at the end, because they are so close to realizing that dream, playing in Brazil's first major, playing as that just last dance old guard squad, right? I mean, that probably, I'd argue that attributes a fair bit as to why some of the comms were obviously incredibly chaotic. That's why you got some of the rounds being incredibly clustered. But then in those moments, that's where you've got your Fallen, you've got your Fur to really just dig you out of that hole. And also, huge respects to Cello. I mean, what a storyline that is. The fact that Cello has pretty much put the Imperial Old Guard on his back on Overpass and just carves out the way, that goes absolutely nuclear. I mean, that's incredible, really.
Yeah, he was one of the highest rated players for Imperial in this event. I think tied up with Fallen, in fact, for that matter, which definitely is always encouraging when you're playing alongside a legend like that and doing as well as he is. I think that just as a team formation, that there's something that has to be concerned about for this Imperial side overall. And it's a great story. You guys are right. Being in Brazil's first major, as legends as they are, I think they deserve it. And I think we would lose something had they not have made it forward from that Complexity matchup. But the reality is the results saw a lot of overtimes over the course of their run. There was only a single map that they were able to dominate on over this RMR. So it does throw up concerns for me that they'll have issues. I think we're on ropes of elimination from like the third round or so from that from the Swiss stage. So the fact that they're having to struggle against Nouns and Complexity, it isn't very encouraging for me. And I feel like the fact that they had those two main stars in Europe, in Cello, was just like, just the main sort of hard carrier. Like that's the way that they got it through. And I don't think that's going to work against European opposition, even though I think we all really want it to be honest.
No, I completely agree. I mean, there's obviously a part of my heart which loves the old days, like misses the legendary rosters and misses those events, and seeing Imperial make it was something I wanted to see anyway. As I said, shame it had to come at the expense of Complexity, but still. And yeah, I mean, there was just an element of magic involved in that series in general. Like, it was absolutely unbelievable what Fur was doing in certain scenarios. Fallen was having collaterals at incredible moments, which you just would never in a million years think would happen. It's just like one in 100, 1 in 1,000 sort of situations that would pop up to sort of sort of magic Imperial their way to the major in ridiculous fashion. So as you say, that's the sort of magic that I don't think necessarily can continue, but they've made it. It's a huge goal of theirs. And I think maybe they can relax a little bit now that's the case.
Just to touch on that as well. Sorry, Ryan, I saw you about to talk, but very quick for me as well. I really just want to credit and also highlight Scrawny and Launders in that series, because they had that was absolutely phenomenal job by them. Like, honestly, unreal. unbelievable.
Yeah, for my money, Scrawny and Launders right now are the best
Yeah.
commentary pair that we have in Counter Striker, and I know that Harry and Hugo won't like me for saying that. I love them. I love them to bits, but I just think that the way Scrawny delivers his lines is so fucking poetic.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. Like I rate them so highly. So yeah, you're damn right about that, BDog. Retro, go on.
I was going to follow on from that point, and I guess I wanted to talk about 00 Nation a little bit as well, doing very well this major, but I'd also like to extend the well done to Tech Girl. I think she did an unbelievable job on the desk this event. I think that, in fact, the desk themselves, having Mahone and Maui Snake there, and obviously Rollers as well, I think was jumping in. That they had a killer stream there. Obviously, it's very easy for us with Europe. We have a lot more talent, a lot more access to desk hosts, to analysts, to hosts, to whatever you want, right? For them, realistically, when you think of top level talent in America, you've got Maui, you've got maybe your Scrawny Launders, maybe you've got your Trace there as well. Like, other than that, I think Heku has always done an amazing job on the sidelines. ESL pulled out a masterclass on this RMR desk and commentary slots. I think Darth Mike and JRT, it was a long time coming for JRT to get the shot, and he really delivered. Darth Mike always does an amazing job. I just feel like this was a really well-placed desk, to be honest. The whole of the broadcast talent was unbelievable this event.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Just the one thing I'm going to say, and I don't want to be, a meanie or anything. I absolutely love the guy. Met him for Valencia, and he's the sweetest man you'll ever meet. But, Rawls, sometimes he does struggle to get his words out because English isn't his first language, Like,
that's something that will definitely improve with time, I think. Though, like he does make some real good points on the desk.
He makes some real good points. It just needs to give him some time a little bit, maybe to get used to speaking English consistently. And I think then having him as a Brazilian representative on these desks is really, really important. And I love the fact that ESL have chosen him to go for that. But, more time, and I think he'll be able to articulate his points even better and make it even more worth it.
I think in an RMR scenario where you've got like the lower levels meeting the higher levels, you need that rep so you can break down teams like Isurus or the new guys from Team 1 or an Arctic and explain to the general audience exactly what they can do. So yeah, in that sense, he's got the role put down. It's a case of a language barrier above all else. And again, that'll come with time, I think, BDog.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say the fact that he's already articulated himself this well and he's only got a few events under his belt, like it's clear it's going to improve. And I was very impressed with what I heard from him as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, all respect to the talent team. I think we as colleagues ourselves, we can love them for who they are, and they're fantastic individuals, people as well. So, looking forward to seeing them in the next RMR, hopefully, with any luck. Talking about the teams back again. I think the big team for me that I was the most impressed about, mostly because of their history and because of the fact that we've seen them bottle so many fucking tournaments this year, has got to be Evil Geniuses. The fact that they were able to go 3-0, the fact they were able to have the run they were able to do, does encourage me now for this team. Like, making it top 2 in that Swiss stage, it does show that we're turning a corner, because I think that the previous EG probably wouldn't have done that.
No, I completely agree with you. This EG being good is almost terrifying. It's just not something that you expected whatsoever. Like, it just doesn't seem right for EG to be good. But realistically, they've been very impressive. Like, Hex, don't get me wrong, he's had a few shitters, I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, the series against Liquid was horrible for him. I think he went -30, but obviously they were already qualified then, so it doesn't matter as much. He needs to step up for the main major. But Breeze has been showing signs of like 2019 form. Cirque, that's the numbers you need to see from Europa. Like, be significantly positive, be significantly higher rated than a lot of your teammates. Obviously, it's hard to be higher rated than Automatic. We always expect the most from Automatic, but yeah, it's Cirque's actually been hitting shots consistently and winning clutches against the likes of OC, which in that series against Liquid, which obviously they lost, but it was in 2 overtimes. They impressed me quite a lot. They've really, really, I think, stepped up back to the 3-year-old form for those two guys. And I think Nilan has some really impressive timings and ideas as well. And the fact he's keeping his personal numbers up is very, very promising.
Yeah, I think the fact that they've had that big move for Nealand's part of things, obviously he's not the star individual, but positive ratings are positive ratings. The star for me definitely has to be Cirque. Like, he was looking like he was in a massive slump for the longest time ever. So the fact he stepped it up here in this tournament and provided the performance that he has, if he can carry that forward to the major, then Evil Geniuses might have a decent run. They're not world beaters or title contenders yet, but I wouldn't put them out of the realm of possibility of being like a team that would hold their own. Like, I think that at this particular point, given where Evil Geniuses have come from, that's the most that you can expect out of this team. And with the showing that they've had in the RMR, the fact that they've done as well as they have, the fact that of course they will be up as a challenger at this moment, and they were one step away from being a legend, you have to give them credit in that sort of sense. Like, it's the thing we were talking about at the end of Pro League. Like, they've turned the corner, they're moving in the right direction, and this right direction feels to me like this is the next step that they had to take.
I was going to say as well, like, it feels like the change that has been made to this EG side was day and night from what we saw in Pro League, right? Like, I think we were having this discussion being like, do you know what? It's not a title winning team. I still don't think it is. I'll stand by that point, and I think everyone will as well. But the history of this team has always been shocking, like horrifically bad. And the fact that we go from an okay-ish job in ESL Pro League to going top 2 here at the RMR for Americas, I mean, fair enough. Fair play to them. You know, they've really pushed the boundaries. They did exactly what they needed to do this event. I think they've shut up a lot of people at home that were kind of worrying about this EG side, or people that wanted to laugh at them and be like, you know what, it's just another dodgy event. Again, that Liquid game was an amazing one. As Trav rightly pointed out, I think there was some individual issues in that series. However, the fact that they push Liquid to 2 maps of OT, 25-23 on Ancients, 19-17 on Overpass, like, they can be really proud of themselves. I honestly, I'm very, very impressed by their performance.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Like, I mentioned Hex, right? I mean, I think even he tweeted himself, if I shot back, we would have won this series, you know? Like, so it's realistically, that is the case. I think for that one, it was very impressive. And really for EG and Liquid, I think they're delighted to both be in that position, to be fair, as well. I mean, they needed to be. It was a desperate situation. And now I'm gonna pose a quick question to you after we've to all of you. After we've seen EG perform genuinely really well in Americas in the challenger stage, what do you think? Are we surely they're not 0-3 now, right? I would have put them 0-3 before performances like this, but now I could see even a 3-2 squeak. What do you think?
Oh my word. Brandon, you seem a little more confident than me in where you're going, so I'll let you go first.
I think before this question was posed, the point I wanted to say is something that is going to fly under the radar for a lot of people towards some success for EG is the fact that they've recently brought back Malik as strategic coach. The fact that he's there now, it's going to be really good and only going to improve going forward. Do I think that they're going to do a 3-2 run? You know what? I wouldn't actually rule it out. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I could see them doing it,
High
and
five.
I feel I respect it, and I feel like they'll at least get 2. I can see them at least getting 2 wins here.
I mean, yeah, I could see it being a I think a minimum 2 would be the best thing for them. If they went out 2-3, I think they can be happy with that. Again, it's all about those small steps that we were saying. Like, they're just to progress forward piece by piece. And so far, like, they've just done that. So to make it away from 0-3, even 1-3 would be an improvement upon that position. You're right about Malik and what he's been able to do. I think that that's definitely a background piece that's aided the G2 side. I think about the teams that will be in the challenger stage, and I think that there are some teams that are beatable for Evil Geniuses, but it's that case of America versus Europe and the levels that Europe are currently at, which does throw the main spanner into the works for me when it comes to Evil Geniuses and being able to sneak through. I don't rule out the 3-2. I don't think it's going to be 3-0, but I also don't think it's going to be 0-3. And in that sense, Evil Geniuses have impressed us in this RMR.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was just having a look, trying to find... you can actually see the matchups that the teams are going to play. Obviously, now we know the book roll system is being
applied. They play IHC.
So
IHC number 1.
IHC in their opening matchup, right? I think they have them. They then play B&E should they win them in their next matchup. So maybe what we'll do then, if you want to have a quick yes or no, do they beat B&E?
It depends what map it is.
Okay, it's true. It is true. So if they beat B&E, they'll play against Vitality. If B&E beat them, obviously just going straight off the favorites and whatever, they'll play Gamer Legion in the one-on-one stage. I think you've got to understand that the difference between the RMRs to now, it's insane. And I don't think any of us, having made our predictions or said our word about the Challengers stage, we know that the level of competition is gonna go so much better than what it was that they're playing against. The fact that they play IHC first, 100%. I think they have IHC beaten day and night. Do they qualify? If I'm honest with you, I think you'd need a bit of an upset still. I think if you look at the names, especially from Europe, right, and we'll talk about how competitive it's been in Europe, and the teams that have gone into the Challenger stage, the form that we're looking at here, the names of the teams that we've got, some of the players as well through the European RMR, I think they're going to need an upset one way or another, whether that is against BNE, whether it is that against Gamer Legion should they lose. Whatever it is, I think you need an above average performance. I need something to make me go wow at this EG side to see them through to the legend stage. However, I will give it to them that if they play anything like we saw in the Americas RMR, I think there is half a chance that they can make it through.
Yeah, I give you that. I think those are all fair assessments. It is still a little bit unpredictable for where we stand on the Evil Geniuses side. But look, it's far better than what they had previously. And I think that for that sense, you can praise them for that. You can also praise Liquid. I think it's probably a lack of discussion here because it's the expected result for them. 3-0 in Swiss, got the 2-0 victory over EG. Yes, tested at times, but that's more of a praise to EG than I think an indictment on the likes of Liquid. Again, they got the first place, they got the Legends. And for the best team in North America, that was the expected result, right?
Absolutely, no shadow of a doubt. Yeah, I mean, they needed to make that one happen. I think also, what I will say, I want to bring up another couple of teams which I haven't really touched on properly yet. I think I have to give huge props. One, to 9Z, who made it through after, roster changes again, and I think it was Buddha they brought in, right? And NQZ, I believe, was only 17, and he looked very good for, in hectic situations on that roster to make it through. And I've got to give props to 00 Nation.
Yeah.
Oh, that organization, 00 Nation, have been absolutely cursed in this entire period they've been in the scene. Full stop. They've had 7 different logos. They've had many different players. And yeah, I think Cold Zero has kind of been cursed recently as well, but he showed some signs of old. And the fact that they hadn't really played much at all since that little mini run they made it in ESL Challenger Valencia where they beat Furia, I was worried that they might be a little bit cold and might come into this not looking too great. But as you see, they squeaked past complexity, and 00 Nation really did make it, I think, easier than I expected as well. I mean, I'm very proud of all those guys because, of course, Cold and Taco do complete the sort of, the quintet, I guess you could say, to make the major from the old guard.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that point and going back to 9Z, I was a little bit skeptical of their performances before heading into the RMR, to be honest, especially with they're bringing in the likes of Buddha and their young Orpa, who's 17 years old. And I was always of the opinion of, okay, well, look, they've got these guys. This is going to be the top level of competition they've ever played. They're now going to be on LAN. The pressure is there to make it through to Brazil. I don't know how they're going to perform, but they really impressed me. And I said it on other podcasts before. I said that I wasn't actually confident in them making it all the way through just of the inexperience and the pressure and the kind of stakes of the event. But I was so impressed with how 9Z handled really dramatic, climactic moments and swing get moments in a series. And I was very, very impressed.
You got to think with 9Z, they were in the last major though, so they already had that that basis to work from as an organization. I think the lineup was a little bit different from back then, if memory serves me correctly. So I understand that changes could also make an impact, but I kind of looked at 9Z and I thought to myself that they probably have a respectable chance. I mean, again, it's a bustling region; they got some real good players, but decent respect to those guys for, of course, making it through. They did well, and North American RMR I think was benefited because of them. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, I think, quite honestly, this is probably the most competitive American RMR I think we've seen in terms of how close, especially the meat of the pack is, right? Those 3-2s, the 3-1 teams. I couldn't tell you the last time that we've had so much competition in the American RMRs. So I'm pretty fond to see how these teams do in the actual major. Obviously, it's going to be difficult because now you're going intercontinental in terms of the teams that you're playing against. You've got Greyhound in there, you've got your IHCs, you've got your European teams. So certainly it's a different kind of test, but one that I'm going to be more than happy to enjoy the Counter-Strike that the American RMRs are able to pump out, right? I think for EG and Liquid, it's a very deserved spot for both. I think for 9Z, as you said, really surprised us. For 00 Nation as well, I'd just like to say on track record, they had a brilliant time this RMR, right? I think you look at their history, they lost to 9Z 16-19. They play against Isurus, they beat Isurus. They then go against Imperial, beat them 16-11. Straight after that, they're against Complexity in a BO3, and they beat them 2-1. Like, you can't argue with how good that run is, and especially for a side of Complexity that maybe, as we'll chat about in a minute, have really disappointed us in this RMR as of yet. I think you can't really take away from a side that beat Complexity 2-1. And sure, all three maps run close, but if I'm honest with you, if you had to bet your house, you're 100% backing Complexity against the 00 Nation side in that best of three, and they really surprised us.
I don't know if I have as much faith in Complexity as maybe you do, Retro, just because of the fact that they are still a little bit in dire straits. We've been talking about how they've had struggles themselves. They've, again, much like Evil Genius has turned a corner, but if I was to go for the chain logic of who I think has turned the bigger corner, it would definitely have to be EG given these circumstances. Complexity, there were a lot of doubts about them coming into this RMR, and it doesn't shock me that they fell at the last hurdle. There was a part of me thinking just maybe they might be able to do it. Maybe they might pull it off against Imperial. But I do think that this team was still a long way to go given the situation that we stand at. Yes, Pro League was far better, but it still wasn't a playoff position, and this will also not be a position in the major for them. So they just got to take that one on the chin, because I think that, again, they sort of were to par more than anything else, really.
Yeah, I feel like the issue with Complexity is the fact that you've got individuals will pop off for maybe a series or one map, but it will not be on a consistent basis throughout like the entirety of that roster. I mean, we've seen a resurgence from Fang, which I've been very pleased to see, because he kind of fell off a little bit of a cliff for a while, and it's good to see that he's resurging. We can talk about the Grim storyline as well, just how incredible he's been. Floppy, for me, there's moments where he kind of goes missing, especially in big series, and I feel like that's not really something you normally associate with Floppy. And maybe it's because you've got a little bit of a restructure there with Hauser coming in, maybe because you've got a bit of a downward trend with how they were performing before. But I feel like as soon as Floppy starts firing again, this team will be much better. And I was actually impressed with how much JT's individual level was risen as well, because for a while he just was not doing anything. He'd have one good series at Pro League, he'd play on Nuke and get like 40 kills or something, and it'd be like, wow, all right, that's cool, and then that's it.
Was it Retro or Trav from last show that was calling for JT or Fang to get replaced?
That was me. That was me.
Retro.
That was.
Well, given what we saw from Complexity, do you still stand by that, Retro? Or do you apply the brakes on those opinions?
Ooh, funny. Really, really original there, Jay. We love that. We love that. No, I think I don't want to, sit here and disrespect too much. Again, I think JT and Fang, very obvious that they're the least capable two players in this team. Do I think that they need replacing? Personally, if I'm Complexity, I'm looking at this team as a whole. I think Floppy and Grim have had an unbelievable event. Halzerk's really shown up as well. I think it's very much like the guns are pointed at Fang and JT, and if they are to make a move, it would be them two. But I think as a disappointment, the whole team will be looking at this event and wondering what they could have done better. Is this literally an individual performance? Looking at JT's stats, he's minus 43 in the event. Like, he is a sinking ship on that team in its entirety. Do I think it's beneficial that Complexity now go and replace JT? I don't know. I'm still a little bit on the fence, but if they are to make a change, I think JT has to go. I think it needs an upgrade. But then again, even if it does happen, who do you get, right? And that's the conversation that we were having on the last show, is that despite whatever you want to say about, maybe making this change, who do you get in replacement for the two players of Fang and JT if you are to remove them? It's just difficult. It's a vicious circle. If there was a chance, I think they'd take it, but there isn't, so they kind of have to stick with it.
I just feel like they bottled it, right? Like, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. They
because they were 2-0 up. Like, they lost to Liquid. It was a close series. And Floppy popped off on Overpass. And then you go against 0-0 Nation. You kind of saying it like, okay, well, you kind of expect Complexity to win that game just because they're on an upward trajectory. And then you factor in all the storyline. You factor in the fact that 0-0 Nation are going to leave nothing on that server. Well, sorry, they're going to leave everything on that server to make it through. Like, I don't know. I feel like they were up 2-0. They definitely had loads of opportunities to kind of make the major, and they didn't.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't disagree with the fact that they kind of bottled it, but I also have to add a caveat to that and say One, I think JT, obviously, while his numbers haven't been good, he had lots of impactful kills, right? Like, it may have
Yeah.
just been,
Yeah.
pardon me, it may have only just been like one or two every now and then, but I can just think of one round in the Imperial game. Sure, they lost it, but I can think of one round where he took it upon himself to, clear out the water player on the B site when it was like a 2v2, and then eventually that won them the round. And Fang, of course, you're mentioning him as well. He was unbelievable in that Imperial game, especially on overpass.
Yeah.
Won 3 clutches. Sure, Imperial probably only had themselves to blame on a couple of those. They misplayed a lot of those retakes, but Fang was unbelievable. And if Complexity had made it over Imperial, we'd be singing Fang's praises and saying he was probably
Yeah.
one of the best players on this roster. So we got to give him a break, I think. Fang deserves to stay. And when it comes to JT, that can be debated for sure, but I think for now, considering how well this Complexity team have done as of late, they've just come up against Brazilian teams who are determined and have put all the work in. Sure, I know Complexity have as well, but they are going for the event that means probably the most in their entire career. And I think that's probably unfortunate for Complexity that they've come up against those two rosters that were looking for it so hard. And and realistically, I think for Complexity, they just need to give a bit of time. And Hulzuk has been a very good player in the clutch as well. So yeah, it's just sad for them because they deserve to make it too for me.
I would agree that I think we definitely do need to give them the floor a little bit. This is a massive disappointment for the team, but I don't think there's, as you said, Trav, like one person to blame. I know the stats definitely do point that way, but JT as an individual, when you've got players like Floppy and Grim doing as well as they did this major, I don't think that that you need to have the best stats in the world, right? I think there's a lot of European CIS examples that the IGL will always, not do great. I think maybe Hooksy on G2 is like probably the most recent example, even though he's having great games. We have IGLs like Karrigan that 100% shoot back and do their bit, and then we have IGLs that don't, and their job is more strategical and keeping the mental in check. And JT is 100% one of those players. I think he's very young as well, right? He's 23 years old. He's playing pretty good Counter-Strike. He's got some very experienced minds around him. I think you definitely have to give him time. However, this event, I think they'll be looking at and being like, JT, is there any way that we can improve him on an individual level? Because I think as much as we can say this is 100% the team's fault that they bottled it, this RMR, had JT have gone -10, 30 more kills this RMR across the maps that they played, I guarantee you, as Trav said, we'd be singing everyone's praises. We'd be congratulating Complexity on making the major. I think that, again, it's hard to say it, but
if JT, wasn't it?
if JT did better, 90% sure we'd be talking about them making the major, but you can't blame him entirely because, again, it's a team game and there's probably mistakes made by everyone through that team in the RMR in general. So, yeah, I sit on the fence a little bit more.
Well, quick word to wrap up the Americas RMR, guys. I'm a little bit conscious for time because we've got a lot to get through on the European side of things. So just quick final thoughts from each of you.
Banging! There you go. That's my final thought.
The Americas RMR had the best game in every single RMR.
Yeah, I can contest that. I can concur with that. Okay.
Yeah, poetic that it was Imperial to be the last team to qualify.
All right, well, that's the America and Asian side done. Of course, the European RMR had 2 RMR sides to it, so that's the reason why I'm a little bit sort of pressy, is trying to get that part out of the way. We'll start with the big one, the A side of the RMR, which, of course, had, I think, the majority of the big teams involved. A lot of very interesting, fun things. Of course, you see the team list on screen right there. Fnatic were there, FaZe were there, Cloud9 were there, G2 were there, Astralis were also in that as well. And, of course, you can see how it worked out in the Swiss stage. FaZe, NIP, Sprout, Spirit, Cloud9, Bad News Eagles, Gamer Legion, and Fnatic were able to take their places in the major as respectively. B8, 1 win, Forza, Astralis, Eternal Fire, Aurora, and Ecstatic were the 8 teams out of the A side of the RMR. The first thing, gentlemen, to discuss easily and 100% the headline of the Eliminatees has got to be G2. It was a cold day in hell. You're goddamn right about that.
Yeah.
What
that was
the
a banger line, by the way.
I'm very happy with that. Thank you very much. What the fuck happened, though, guys? I mean, I probably should be the man that should explain that the most personally. To me, it just felt like it was the ultimate bottle job. But from your perspective, like, was there anything more deeper than that?
I don't know. I think I want to kind of give G2 a little bit of slack, and I think that's going to be a bit weird for hearing that. Hooksy hasn't been around for long whatsoever, right? And for this side as a whole, Hooksy joined on the 16th of the 8th, right? So we've got him in for less than a month. There is minimal time to prepare for this RMR. I mean, sure, if there's any organization to have it, it would be the resources of G2 that would be able to help them. As you can see, the stats on screen, Hooksy, not a great job. JKS, again, for what, his second big event in G2, I want to say, maybe his third big event in G2. He hasn't done a bad job. Either Nico, Hunter, Manesi, I want to talk about him as an individual a bit more because he had a great time on a personal level in these RMRs. You've got to give some respect because this is a G2 side that have gone through a bit of change with JKS and Hooksy. Haven't really had all the time in the world to kind of prep for this. But if you look at the teams that they're playing, you should be able to pug against some of the teams that they're playing against in the RMRs and still win. The fact that we lose 2-1 to Gamer Legion, the fact that admittedly, one win did very well this RMR, and I think there's a chat to be had about them later down the line. Looking at the results that they have, though, just look, man. Look how one-sided some of these games are getting towards the end, right? That Gamer Legion, the one in the middle, the Mirage, the 16-4. Like, for G2, it doesn't matter what level you're at or what cycle this team stands in. You should not be being punished this hard by a side that wasn't even together for the start of the RMRs. You know, for the qualies, they'd only just bonded together. And the fact that it's Gamer Legion that take down G2, big respect to them. But I think everyone here will be mesmerized at how the hell G2... And they started the event with a 16-0. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
They started it with a 16-0. They looked so good. I think for everyone, we were like, yo, this G2 side, like, we know Ecstatic is a pretty competent team with the Masonic core. We're like, okay, not bad. That's a decent start. Like, I'm pretty impressed. Cloud9 is always going to be a tough game. And then one win in Gamer Legion, man. Like, you've got to look at that one win game, quite honestly. And I reckon at that point where they lose to one win, that was where they realized things were going to get a lot more difficult. And that was the turning point for them in this RMR.
See, I take a look at this team, and there are surrounding circumstances aside. I know you've been just saying about the Carlos thing. I don't think that has much of an impact on the team's performance itself. What I do think, however, is when I take a look at this HLTV page again, and I see this much red contrasted with this much green, to me it indicates a team thing rather than a player thing, because you can't look at the performance metrics, and given what we know the roles of this team, Manesi, Hunter and Nico definitively are the stars. JKS can be the backup dancer with Hooksy being the IGL. At that point, to me, it comes upon the IGL side of things and the calling being made, because when you have great performances going 1.2, 1.18 and shit, and you've got that across 3 different players and you still can't make it past round 4, then I think that comes down to the team more so than anything else, which is where you have to put Hooksy's calling into question, because he had a great pro league, fantastic, awesome, congratulations for that, but was that just a honeymoon period?
For me, I think G2 are victims, as Retro has said, are victims of Hooksy being a little bit new and not having as much prep time. But even he says that they could pug out against some of these teams. I think it's in G2's situation. Even they, with the talent they have, are susceptible to these tier 2 EU teams being different, being ones they haven't played against before, ones they haven't practiced against before, ones that a different look for them. And I think Gamer Legion was a really good example of that. I mean, honestly, screw Hooksy. Shuri is my Giga Chad. I mean, honestly, like the guy absolutely led that one to a brilliant result, and of course making it, which we probably will get onto later. But yeah, G2, I agree that we shouldn't bash them too much. They deserve their criticism for not making it, because it's the biggest failure in the organization's history. I think it's the first time since 2015, since the very beginning. I think Cluj-Napoca it would have been, wouldn't it? And when they made their first major and have made every single one since. But yeah, I think blame has to come down to Hooksy rather than the individuals, and just the time that he had is realistic. It should be winning. I'm still confused personally. I'm still baffled as to how they didn't make it. I think, as Retro said, the 1-win game is probably the most insane one to look at and say, if they take that, then draws are different and they're feeling a lot more comfortable in the 2-1 bracket rather than the 1-2 bracket, right? And then Gamer Legion, of course, who are the shock team, don't have a chance to upset them. But look at it this way. Zyphon, Sprout, Roy and Ikerodos, Fnatic made the major. All of them. Hooksy is the only ex-Copenhagen Flames player not to make it to the major, and he was the one technically on the best team. There you go.
Go on.
Oh.
I'm gonna go against the grain here.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about Hooksy. I want to talk about JKS. because
Okay, all right, fine. Go on. I want to hear this.
I do not think he was the correct pickup at all.
No,
GT.
no, yeah.
Okay.
Like you look at some of these games. You look at the 1-win game, 16-13 on Ancient, 13 kills. Mirage against Cloud9, 16-13, 14 kills. And even in the 16-0 against a Static, he got 8 kills. I don't agree with the pickup.
Brandon,
Yeah.
just for 1 second. Don't forget, JKS plays a lot of Jax's roles, which are the
Yeah.
difficult roles.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
agree.
Like
that
the annoying roles.
but I still think that he should be putting up better numbers against
It's
one
fair.
win.
It's
I feel
fair.
I know he's playing the Jax roles. I know the Jax roles are very difficult to play, and that's why Jax was playing in them. And I feel like Jax kind of always on the edge of, will he, won't he go? But I don't know. When that roster move happened, I was a bit like, why is this come in? Because he's had one good event with FaZe. You've got to remember that FaZe always makes stand-ins look good because of the supporting cast around them. Remember when Chroman had a really good event in FaZe?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think,
agree.
and then before that, it was just in Complexity doing nothing. When that team kind of collapsed with just various situations. I feel like that wasn't on him. That's not him solely to blame, but I feel like he showed very good stuff in the beginning and then just kind of stagnated a little bit. And yeah, he had a good pro league. Don't get me wrong. He had a good pro league, but I feel like he's playing those tougher roles. But I still expect a little bit more out of JKS, especially the way that people talk about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't
I
help the
couldn't
fact
agree
that the Reddit crowd love him to bits, and it's just like the fans.
The meme's gone too far.
Yeah,
the Giga meme for Hooksy's definitely gone too far.
Yeah, that I think contextualizes it a bit more because of the narratives that the people have made, it makes us think much more highly of JKS and Hooks and what they showed in this tournament, and that's the reason why to me it was so shocking to see G2. I mean, in part, sure, obviously you've got the three main players that have been doing so well, but just like it doesn't help the situation and the outlook right now for the G2 side. So I have to agree with both sides of that one. I'm not sure whether it really is a case that JKS was the wrong pickup. I just think that there is no true right pickup when you have so much star power that you rely on elsewhere. Like I don't think JKS needs to be a star within this team, even though he probably should have got more impact from the kill basis in those other map ups.
I'll raise you this then.
Yeah, go
on. Alex instead of Hooksy. Thoughts?
Ooh.
Alex is in
Fnatic
British. Alex, yeah. To be honest, I think that would be really interesting because I think he's actually a very solid player. But again, I kind of want to say he's in a very similar situation to where JKS was beforehand. I think we need to see Alex play a little bit more.
I agree.
Maybe.
That's actually a really good point because that's the main point I made about JKS actually, and probably why Brandon's point is actually pretty on point. Is I think I put two players into this sort of category of living off community respect and stand-in performances. JKS is one of them, and Valda's another. Valda's done quite well, I've got to say. Respect to Valda for sort of dispelling what I thought might happen. But JKS is still kind of living off the stand-in performance, his numbers that he used to have years ago. That's the thing. It was years ago. He had some rust to begin with. I think he's shaken off the rust. But these roles are still maybe not necessarily where he should be as a player on this team. You can't necessarily put an old star player in the most difficult roles and think that he's going to shine and make it an absolute.
No, I agree with
that. I make it like a rosy day. Do you know what I mean? So it's tough. It's very tough.
I'd say though on that, I think if there's any person that would kind of accept the roles that you would be given, it would be JKS, because I don't think we never thought JKS was a star man. He's never going to be in those positions to go absolutely nuclear in a BO3. He's never going to be a Nico, a Hunter, a Monacy. He's never
only in Renegades back in the day.
Yes,
that was the only time.
You're not going to see that from him in a European standpoint. Honestly, I think that he knows that as well. Playing in the bitch roles a little bit more, it's understandable. But actually, I really agree with Brandon, and I think he struck gold here in that, was JKS the right pickup? Well, you look to his very short history in recent times, it was one standard performance and one okay job at Pro League, right? There's no history really with JKS. This is his third, well, maybe not his third event. I think it is actually, right? Like, other than the stand-in, this would be his third.
The blast stuff as well, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, okay. So maybe it's a little bit more than that. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a very narrow time frame for a lot of the time before that was spent on the bench. Maybe there was a lot of trialing, a lot of working on him as a player, a lot of molding and sculpting JKS to what he is today. And maybe G2 have picked him up because he's doing exactly what he needs to do. Personally, I think there's a lot more potential in other options. And I think Alex is actually a really good one to point out, is that he is an individual that we've always said just plays an anchor and he'll get kills. He'll play the bitch role, he gets kills. And if this G2 run doesn't prove already that they need a little bit more firepower and they need an extra shoulder to lean on, I think there's definitely an opportunity there. I'm not going to get rid of JKS though immediately.
No,
I think
you shouldn't.
there's plenty of time until we have to make that assumption. But I will say, if there's ever a man that needs to be called up, I think that's a perfect shout. I think Alex should be taking the place there immediately.
I was quite happy with that little call, but Rusty, I just sorry, Jay. I was just going to say, like, I agree also that Alex can be still rusty, and already you still, in my opinion, need to give Hooksy some more time. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you still need to give Hooksy some more time, because if you've had Alexi, his system, for however long, you've had Hooksy's system, which obviously is going to be very different because Alexi has a very interesting system. Just for this short period of time, and then you get rid of him and bring in a new system, the third in a year. Yeah. Sorry, you need to just be patient for once, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to get that last little point in.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's like, Alex would be an intriguing move, what you mentioned earlier, but I just think it's just the wrong one to make it this time. Maybe come the end of the year, if G2 don't get the results that they want to in the tournaments that they're playing in, then sure, make that move going into 2023. But like, just the fucking chopping and changing, I don't think it's going to help the situation at all. The instability definitely feels like it's a lot more internal. Nubich again just saying, why is it every team that Nico is on just falls apart? Whether that's down to him or something else going on, like all these factors don't help the situation for G2. And it led to what I think we saw during this RMR, to not only where it was a cold day in hell on that particular day, it froze over when Gamer Legion decided to make it to the fucking major. We'll move the conversation onto these boys, because I think you have to give them credit not only for that G2 result, but to carry it forward, and of course to win their round 5 game, not to make it would have been the expected result for a team like Gamer Legion, considering how new they were. The fact that they fucking did it though, man alive, what a run.
I love it. I love this more than anything, because they, while I respect Bait, for example, right? Like Bait Esports, what they did
was unbelievable. Is it Bait or B8, by the way? I don't fucking know. It's Bait.
The logo's the fish hook.
Yeah, the logo's a fish hook.
Yeah. So,
right, okay,
yeah,
thank you.
I'm pretty sure it's Bait. But yeah, what I was pretty happy with Gamer Legion is that, while, as I say, I respect Bait, I think that, look at the teams they had to play. The FaZe game, sure, it was overtime clan in this event, but either way, they lost against them. Then they had to play against Aurora, which, was probably 50-50 to some people at the time. They beat them. Spirit, another overtime, and then they had to play G2. They've played some really, really difficult matches in this particular event, and the only team that Bait really beat that was an unlikely one was Fnatic. They didn't get any more than that, I would say.
Insane game, by the way.
Insane result, an insane game. And I've got to say, Amster's had some ridiculous performances in this event. I think he had a 1v4 clutch against Fnatic, and a 1v4 against, I think Sprout it was as well. But yeah, for Gamer Legion's sake, I had the pleasure of covering their game to qualify in the 2-2 match, and that was just like, it's like they'd been there forever, like you could definitely see there were some nerves for A-Core, and I think maybe by extension maybe a little bit on Isaac as well, but once they relaxed into it, it's like they knew they were the favorites. They played it calmly, they played it slowly, they didn't do anything ridiculous, and they didn't play like a team that has the opportunity of a lifetime. Like I absolutely loved what they did, and Shiri is, I think, my new hero, to be honest.
Well, when you're leading a team like that and you're doing as well as you have for Gamer Legion, you have to give him praise. The player that stood out to me the most was Core, though. Like, he was just lights out for this Gamer Legion side. Top rated player by a country mile. He looked fantastic in the server, and it's such a contrast from his previous team or two about what he's been able to do with this particular squad. And if you're an established player like Core and you've had a bit of a downtime, you need to sort of go towards one of these tier 2 teams and figure out whether you can make your way back into the into the tier 1 space, be that on that team or with a different squad. I think Core's made a real good case for himself in this RMR, considering what Gamer Legion were able to do, honestly.
Yeah,
Oh,
Sorry, Ryan, go on.
go on. No. Go on, Brandon.
No, it's fine, because I've got quite a bit to say, because I
Ah,
watched a lot
okay.
of the Gamer Legion games. So
I
you
was,
can
I
go
was
first.
going to say, the fact that they've been a team since, well, the most recent three, Acor, Shui, Kios, have been in the team from the 16th of the 9th, right? Which means that they've been in the team for, I mean,
Less than a
what,
month.
2, 3...
It wasn't
It's,
announced.
so,
When they
so,
the open quals, it wasn't even announced that they were
so
going to be on
they
Game
were,
Legion.
they've been a team for 22, 23, 24, 25 days, I think that makes it. 20, 25, 26 days.
Officially, I think they were practicing a month before that, but even
Yeah,
so.
so yeah, even if you want to give them that month, right? You want to say
Yeah.
maximum 2
2
months they've
months,
spent
yeah.
together. And the fact that you go into this RMR, into the qualifiers, may I say, smash through the qualies, get yourself that slot in the RMR, and from there, I mean, sure, it was the 4th qualifier, it was quite close. Sometimes people always argue, oh, it's just a fluke if you make it through the 4th RMR. If you have a look at the
Didn't even play the
names,
others. They only
no,
played like 2, I think.
exactly.
I think they played 2 out
I
of
was going to
4.
mention this,
yeah.
right? The fluke doesn't exist for these guys because they didn't play them all. And if you think it was Astralis, Heat, and One Win, the other teams that qualified to this RMR above you and saw, like, that's still a very stat qualifier that you're making it through from. I can only give props to them as a team. I think that for Gamer Legion, we saw them at the end of last year dabble a bit in the top 30. We were getting a bit surprised when we saw the roster start dropping like flies, and obviously saw moves to ITB. We saw moves to the free market. We saw everything like just basically go horrifically wrong for Gamer Legion. The belief that they have in picking up Shui, in obtaining Acor, getting Keels as well back in business. Honestly, I think this has got to be one of the sickest runs in a qualifier for a little while. I think context matters the most in this situation, but they put up one hell of a show, man. To beat G2
Yeah.
and to go on, and after beating G2, your mental is at such a high. You've got to earth yourself a bit when you're playing against Bait, because sure, it's, you know, technically an easier matchup and whatever. It's very easy to just let yourself go and forget and just get too confident. The fact that they're able to close it out, man, that is insane. The 2 losses they took this RMR were to Spirit into FaZe. They beat G2, they beat Aura in a BO1, and they beat Bait to qualify. Bait, a different conversation. I think that everyone here will say they had a great event as well, and I'm excited to see more from them. For them to even be 2-2 in the first place, Gamer Legion, and the context that they beat G2, I think we are going to be talking about this for a very, very long time.
Well, certainly talking the RMR for a long time. I'm not sure whether or not it's a honeymoon run from Gamer Legion, because like you mentioned, the team is very new, and you're going to have those circumstances about them not being very easy to read. It's not to take anything away from the players, and obviously they deserve all the credit.
I just mean that, like, oh, do you remember that time Gamer Legion beat G2?
Oh no, that's going on a fucking tattoo for me. I swear to God, like,
years.
you know, this is going to be one of those moments that's remembered in history of Counter-Strike. As for Gamer Legion going into the major, though, I can't say that I have the most amount of faith. It was still a 2-2 result for them to make it through. I think they've already surpassed expectations anyway, so I can't blame them if they bomb out in the challenger stage. They found the run of a lifetime, and I think that's the main thing to take away from these guys.
I don't think they'll bomb out at all. I think, well,
really?
from what I was watching, they should have won that Spirit game, by the way. They were up like 15-10, 15-8, something like that.
Should have won the FaZe game as well.
And they should have won the FaZe game. But I feel like you've got that situation where Gamer Legion like struggled to close out games. That's because of nerves, that's because of new roster, right? The thing I was impressed with so much just watching this team is firstly how much freedom Acor had. And because of the fact that Shui's allowing him just to go for what he's feeling, what he's up to, he's peaking in individual form, and he does it every single major cycle. Don't know what it is, don't know what Acor does, but every single time he plays in an RMR or he plays in the major, he performs exceptionally well. And then what I want to add on to that is their mid rounds. Some of the reads that Shui had and some of the plays he was making his team do were absolutely the right call every single time. It was absolutely fantastic. And they played Ancient a lot, which is why I'm going to talk about Ancient a fair bit, just for maybe like a minute, because I know we need to like move on. But you've got them taking middle, which is obviously very important on the CT side. Then they just leave Kios there on his own. No util. Go on, Kios. Do your thing. He gets a multi-kill every single round he's there. It's actually outrageous. It was unbelievable. I was so impressed with Gamer Legion.
I was going to say, I don't know who cherry picks these players, man, but
I can tell you. So they did an interview. It was, I think, HLTV did an interview with Shui, and Shuey said Ash selected Shuey because they've played
My
together
boy.
before back in the day, and Shuey and Ash picked these guys. Just
Mate,
Shuey had
I-
about 80% of the decision making into who comes into
love that.
Gamer Legion.
I love
Yeah.
It was
that.
unreal.
Can I just say? Can I
Unbelievable.
just say? Ash has always been a super underrated talent scout because for those of you who don't know, even back during his earliest career, he found Mezzy and unearthed him from the fucking dungeons of the UK CS scene. So the fact that he's been able to do that all the way back in like 2017, before Mezzy was even a speck on the radar of international CS, goes to show exactly what this guy can do. Ash is a fucking legend, and I'm so happy he's found his success because he's always had that respect in my eyes for doing as much as he's done. And even if he had just found Mezzy and that would have been it, that would have been massive impact, in my opinion, for his own contributions to the Counter-Strike circuit.
I'm so happy.
I was going to say, like, you've got to think how little budget has probably been spent on these players as well, right? Like, actually, if you want to look at this from a business POV, you've picked 5 players that certainly won't be the most expensive players, don't have the most experience, definitely will not have a massive number to the buyout clause, right? Gamer Legion probably did splash some cash in this new project, but this is a massive roll of the dice. And if I'm honest with you, this is proof that you've got to let teams figure out who they want, right? For Shuey and for Ash, the fact that they've cherry-picked these players and they've plucked them out of nowhere and they've gone, do you know what? This is the team. These are the people I want to play with. They've worked so well for this one. Brandon's dead right, man. Everyone in their own element, they work like that well-oiled machine.
Indeed, and for Gamer Legion, look, they're mustard. That's all you can really say about that. A team that are not so mustard. I was going to talk about a couple of things before we got to Astralis, but we have to talk about them now, mostly because of a quick announcement that just came out while we're doing the show.
Man, Trav.
While we're doing the show.
Right now.
Yep, Config is out for permanency. He is done. His contract is cancelled. Sayonara, goodbye, good night, good luck in your future endeavours, and probably good riddance at this stage. Like, we heard the rumours going around. I think this confirms a lot about what we were hearing about the situation in Astralis. And just in general, man, this team, they're fucked. They are like 6 ways from Sunday fucked. There's not, I can't see anything redeemable about them anymore. Like, the run at this RMR was just like, just look at it. Like, you can't even get a map above Forza, for fuck's sake. We were talking about complete rebuilds, and I guess we can entertain the conversation about who you get to rebuild in at this stage, but it's just back to square one, in my opinion. Like, you just have to completely start from scratch if you're Astralis. This whole RMR cycle has been a shit show, not only in the RMR, but think about the open qualifiers. They played in all 4, barely made it in on the 4th one. Like, you know, you're losing to mixed teams in from fucking whatever region has never had any level of Counter-Strike like competency. At that point, it's over. Like, it's done. It's over.
They're probably kicking themselves that they didn't invest in Copenhagen Flames.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, those guys are up and gone now, and they were like, no, we'll stick with our guns. Nope. And the first thing about it is that some of those players might have actually been cheaper when you think about the business side.
Probably,
They fucked it big time, in the short term at least.
I really think, I mean, maybe people will question me on this one, but I really think at this point, for this roster, Blame has his critics, no doubt about it, because of the way his style and him being last alive all the time, which is, you know, a shame. But he obviously is genuinely a really good player. So I think you get rid of all of them, honestly. I mean, I think Glave's era is over. I think Farley is not good enough. I think maybe if the rumors are true and Device finally gets back to Astralis, maybe you go Blame, Device, Glaive and mix something around those 3. But even Glaive, I think now is kind of done. I think Zip is very done and it's been done for a while. I've always said that it's Astralis team, even if they, you know, even if they did well, that Zip is the one that's sort of living a charmed life on this roster because his day has come. And it's funny, right? I mean, for anyone who knows me, I'm one of the biggest Astralis haters, to be honest, of all time, because of what they did to my
despite that,
VP.
you're still convinced Thorin.
Despite Thorin's tweet saying he thinks I have money on Astralis, I fucking despise this roster for what they did to my beloved VP back in the day. But what I gotta say, get the Deadwood out. Honestly, it's time. I'm delighted they lost because it let teams like Gamer Legion have a chance. Sprout, of course, new roster, new young guns, those sort of teams that they've been given their opportunity. As for Astralis, I casted that game against Fours. They were 13-4 up on Mirage against Fours. They couldn't close it. Get them out. Screw them. Start again from scratch, please. Thank you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
I'm glad we're in agreement on that, man, at least, Trav.
I'd like to see a European approach taken by Astralis now at this point. I think the Danish talent, obviously for Astralis talent, maybe stick Danish just so you do have that core and you can bring up some new players. Personally, though, I'd like to see maybe the more European spin on it. Right now, I don't think we have enough up-and-coming Danish talent that can deliver on the same levels that Astralis want. And I think it would make more sense, as Trav says, say goodbye to some of the players. Maybe keep Blame F around because he's not a bad individual. Maybe do you want to build something around him, get a new IGL, pull the Gamer Legion approach? I don't know, but for the most part, I think everyone here will be nodding their head at Astralis making changes, and yeah, see you later to the Danish side. Maybe even keep the Danish core and go for 2 Europeans and start speaking English. Look at the success Vitality have had in recent times, right? I know it took them a long time to build it up, but that's still got Danish blood flowing through there. Those players certainly haven't lost their touch. Astralis certainly shouldn't be. It's clearly the environment, not the players. But I think we've exhausted so many different environments now that there has to be some attention turned to that there are some players there that should not be.
Just to touch on Farley as well. I feel like Farley had he obviously hasn't put up the best individual performance recently, but I feel like he had a real poison chalice when he came in. And I feel like, I don't know. For me personally, like I do rate him. Like I feel like he will come good in time. But I feel like it was kind of that whole situation with him just coming in and then be the immediate expectation for him to be like up there. I still feel like Astralis haven't filled that hole on device left, and it's just one of those things. And I feel like it's a bit difficult. And yeah, I agree. I'm glad they didn't make it, to be honest, because I feel like now that's going to really prompt this rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor on the word on the street is that the device is coming back. That's not going to fix anything, I'm afraid. Sorry, boys.
It's not, no.
As wishful as the thinking might be, as great as a player as device is, like when you've got a team that is this bad across the board, no, not even Simple could fix that, I'm afraid. Like, it's just too far gone at this moment. So
I know we're pushed for time, so I'm just going to finish Astralis really quickly. From my point of view, Mister did better than I expected.
Yeah,
I
he
think
did
he's
unreal.
okay. I'm quite impressed with him. Fair play to the lad. And as for criticizing Config, his Twitlonger that he just released a couple of seconds ago is two scrolls long, and it reads quite unfairly in his side, to be fair to him. So we're not gonna get into that. I don't think we don't have any time for that. We'll save it for another podcast. But I've got to say, feel bad for him, but this is the only option for Astralis for sure.
All right. Quickly, another thing I want to touch very briefly on, exclusively because I want to brag to Trav about this. Eternal Fire, you said you had faith in this particular team during the last show. They fucked it, boys.
Mate, I want to say, at Naokai, fuck you, man. He said Eternal Fire, we're going to do Unreal. Suck my balls, bro. That's all I have to say. There you go. That's it. I'm happy. I'm done. There's the rage out. He said that Eternal Fire, we're going to rail this competition. Mate, they fucking blew, man. Like, yeah. I'm happy now. That was
keep going, please, by all means.
That was the burst that I needed. Mate, I'm sorry, this Eternal Fire side, if you thought they were going to be good, fair enough. To be honest, like, there was chances. There was chances. I'll give it to them. Maybe there was, you know, an opportunity that they could win. They could do something. Immor, stunk, bro. Absolutely heathen, right? Major as well. Not a bad event. Like, Paz,
he got replaced as soon as they went out, dude.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this.
Oh
like,
my god, that's so stupid. Why have they got rid of Major?
All of this European experience. Immor does horrifically.
Trav, go on, Trav, go.
I need to explain myself for my choices because I covered them in ESL Rotterdam quals, and they were so impressive. Like, I know it's online, but they beat Sprout, who made it easily. They beat, I think they beat one win as well in recovery to get through to Rotterdam, the main event. I was hoping that they would continue that form on, but even at the beginning, obviously, even though the games were close, it just didn't look as good. And I think Turkish Counter-Strike, unfortunately, has a history of sort of blowing up a little bit and being some internal issues. I understand that it looks really bad, but I also can see the reasoning behind getting rid of Major. Maybe there's some historic conflict there that they don't want to, maybe his calls are not what they want. And realistically, even though removing Major does look stupid, I do feel as though, even though this is a massive failure, that it might not be the end of the world for this roster. They brought back xFloud. He's the player that I wanted to see instead of Paz to begin with. And Paz can now go into Major's roles, which he would be better at, and xFloud can go back into Paz's roles, which xFloud was really good at before. So I think, honestly, even though it looks dumb, it could improve the team long term.
Yeah, but who the fuck's calling now?
Maybe Paz now, to be honest, I would say. He's
Got
got
a
like,
stag on the road there, haven't you, Trav? There.
But I mean, they were better. Look at it this way: Xantares and Woxic, when they did it, this team made the major. So if they do it again, why not? To be honest.
No, I don't agree with that. I feel like you can't have Xantares, you can't have Woxic calling. Look at how good Woxic has been since Major's been in that lineup. I think for me, I understand and appreciate what you're saying about like put Paz in Major's roles, but at the end of the day, Paz reeks. Like, it just weren't good. Like, get rid of Paz, bring him back xFloud, keep Major on the IGL, because some of their calls were all right. It just felt rubbish.
I agree with you.
Like,
I'm just trying to give an argument as to why I think they did it, you know?
I think that, honestly, given how much we just shat on Astralis a moment ago, the fact that Eternal Fire couldn't even beat them, at this point, it's just a gatekeep condition to get into the tier 1 level. That's the big concern, you know? Like,
Emil's going to call.
Emil's going to call?
Apparently.
Okay, well, what about that?
That I don't like. That I don't like even more, to be honest. I'll be honest with you. But there we are.
Yeah. And another quick thing on Eternal Fire, just to add for the flame, right?
Yeah.
The fact that Aurora Gaming take you to 3 maps, a team that has no LAN experience outside of their native country, a team that has struggled massively in this event, I would argue, in the best of ones as well. Like, look at this matchup, right? I get, you know, Xantares is top of the sheet.
This.
But at the same time, if you have a look at the scoreboard, right, and have a scroll down, there is a clear pattern here in this team. Looking at those numbers,
of course there is. Yeah.
Aura, like, fair enough, not a good game. Paz does actually. Do you know what? He doesn't do bad considering everything as well.
Paz on Nuke was unreal, by the way. Like, I want to give props to Paz. Paz was unbelievable. I think it went like 14-1 to start off that Nuke decider or something. And he was like clutching everything. Aurora looked lost on Nuke, by the way. Like, I covered this game. It was interesting to see. It looked like 2 lost soldiers, just kind of like bumbling about trying to get to a bomb site. That's kind of what that series felt like. It was really difficult to kind of watch, to be honest. But there were good moments in it. I mean, like Xantares, I mean, obviously you're going to get a lot out of him, but he played really well. Woxic was playing very well as well, and Paz did well on Nuke. And that was it. That's all I could take away from that game. Aurora, I was upset at how they performed because I thought that given that although it's online, it's different to LAN, they're on a little bit of an upward trend. I thought the Starets were going to help them out a bit. Turns out not at all, and they bombed out. But I don't know.
I think I reckon that with Eternal Fire, it's the same thing that we had during the major post show when we were doing that. Like the problem is that the Turkish scene just doesn't have. There's something missing from their level of talent, and they're always going to hit this glass ceiling. They just struggle to break through. You can't fix that with an all Turkish lineup. And for the Turkish scene, fair enough, you'll have that team that will do well in the tier 2 space. When it comes to the tier 1 transition, it's just not going to happen. Eternal Fire, if they Soulfly? Possibly. I still don't think it's enough. I just think that right now there's something a bit more deeper rooted than just looking at roster changes and hoping to try and make it here. But I just wanted to bring that up because Trav, you were huffing some serious copium. I wanted to rub it in your face a little bit, just because it was
true.
I just think that Eternal Fire, they'll be great in the tier 2 scene. They'll make it to the RMRs. Maybe they might have a miracle run over to make it into a major. But I think even if they get that far, they'll only go so far as the challenger stage, and that will be it. Again, this is not a team I have a lot of faith in anything much more than a tier 2 capacity. We are short on time though, so I do want to move on to some more pertinent topics. A few teams that made it through. Fnatic are one that certainly continued their story arc of being a vast improvement upon what they were before. They made it through at the 3-2 Swiss stage, so not the best of performances in the world, but considering they're off the back of a rebuild and the fact they became the highest rated team in RMRA, it's something here.
Yeah. Obviously, I know we're a bit pushed for time, so I don't want to like kind of move off this point too quickly. I think for Fnatic, they had a pretty good event individually. This is like I don't know, especially for a 3-2 team. I've never seen 5 players in the green. I think you've got to give massive respect to the rebuild. Every player seems to be doing quite well. Crim's really surprised me in that Fnatic phase game at how much he still got it. I think as well for Fasha, this is an abnormally quiet event. I think all of us here can sit here and sing our praises at how good he is as an individual that frags out. Maybe it's the structure of Fnatic. They want him on a little more passive. They've got him on the reins a little more than what he was out on Ecstatic. But as a whole, Mezzy, brilliant job. As an IGL, bear that in mind as well. To middle out the sheets, he had a brilliant job. Roy as well. He's really surprised me at how capable he is. And Nikodos is always someone that we talk about. This side here is going to be one for the future, 100%. I'm excited to see them in the contender status. And if there's one thing that I'll say on this stream now that might raise a few eyebrows, I have Fnatic as one of the teams that will go 3-0, maybe even 3-1 at the Legend stage.
No, I've got
I respect it a lot. I respect it a lot.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm even with you, Retro. I said even after I realized they were playing Cloud9 in Series 1, in the first BO1, I'm going to stick with it, honestly, because they're a team that can either go through 3-0 or 3-1 or just bomb out entirely. And that's usually what you want to pick as your 3-0, right? One that might go really well or one that might not go through at all. So I agree with you. I'm not going to go on too much about Fnatic because we're pushed for time. I'm just going to say I love the team. Mezzy, fantastic. King Mezzy, all hail him. He's not, King Charles, but he's my king.
Yeah.
King Charles isn't even my king, dude. Like, fuck the hell.
One final word on Fnatic. What I think is really cool is I think it's part coincidence, part intentional. It's kind of the roles the different teammates have. Is you've got pairings. You've got the Copenhagen Flames, especially on Overpass, right? You've got Copenhagen Flames players. Nikodos, Roy, they play A on CT side. Crims, Mezzy, they play B together. That's kind of the same all throughout the map board. I think it's really cool that they've got these little packs that know what to do because they've already got the chemistry of playing with each other for so long. I think that's only going to help Mezzy in his calling going forward.
Yeah, I think there's as much to say about Fnatic other than just well done, really, for doing as well as they have. Like, yes, it was a round 5 affair, and they had a couple of struggles in terms of their losses in the best of ones, but best of ones against fucking FaZe and Bait, of course, Bait being a difficult team that I think a lot of teams came in to underestimate in this one. Like, you're talking about, like, I think acceptable losses and 2-0s in both your best of 3s against 1 win and Eternal Fire. Like, we're seeing a team, I think, that are very composed, and I can't blame anyone for having as much confidence in this Fnatic team as you do. Like, I'm excited for what this future holds for this roster. I think it could be a very, at the minimum, a dark horse, at the maximum, like a potential like future contender in these championships. So I'm really excited for where it goes from here.
I just realised we haven't even touched RMRB yet.
Yeah, I was going to say two quick things I want to say. Two quick things I want to say. Sprout, brilliant job pushing face the distance.
I was about to get to them.
Insane stuff. And BNE, man, they have my heart. Like, the reaction, if you saw when they qualified, man, oh, it gives me goosebumps. It gives me chills, man. I heckin' love Bad News Eagles, man. I love them.
Yeah, I mean, look, for those two teams, obviously being the tier 2 representations, I mean, they kind of have their own position held. I think that I had a lot of doubts about Sprout coming into this RMR, but the improvement they've had over the last month and a half, like, they've just been completely lights out for my money. I'm definitely a much bigger fan of the cohesion of the team itself. So, like, I can happy with that. BNE, fantastic story run. Great stuff for them, obviously, to make it back into the major as standard. I think that these are all kind of standard talking points that we could, brush over very effectively and just move on. Anything else to highlight in RMRA before we move to RMRB, guys?
FaZe looked a little bit rough, but they got the job done. Just exactly what you need out your defender major champions. The fact that they had the
winning with a B game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly what you need, yeah.
I'd say one thing as well, Spirit over C9 in that 4th place tiebreak was pretty cool to see that Spirit beat C9. I'm not too sure what other people think, but I thought C9 would have them beat 9 times out of 10 in that
they look fucking exhausted to me. Cloud9,
yeah, it probably is, isn't it?
I think they were phoning it in, honestly, in that matchup, having called it myself. Like, it was just very slow, very just sort of like, we'll see what happens here in this one. I wasn't a fan of how they played. I don't think that they were too bothered by the seeding match, honestly, even though it did mean the difference between fucking, like, major challengers and legends. So I think that's a little bit lackluster from their own part, but they made it to the major, and Cloud9, I think that's a standardized thing for them. So, like, just take it on the chin, but definitely need to see much more confidence and much more commitment from them during the major itself. So RMRB now, because we are very pressed for time at this particular stage, boys, so we'll just quickly brush over the results and just sort of just take you through what happened. These are the team lists, your highlights: Na'Vi, Ents, Vitality, Mouse, Outsiders, Big, OG were in there, and of course the tier 2 teams are standard. Top 8 teams: Na'Vi, Ents in 3-0, OG, Heroic, Vitality in 3-1, Big, Mouse, Outsiders 3-2, everybody else down and out in this one. The Falcons are the team I want to start with on this one, because obviously they had like a real high amount of potential. They were France's representation. I think a lot of people had faith in them after they beat Heat and trumped them to have a decent crack. But drawing against the Outsiders was never going to be enough. It was always going to be a bad time for them, I think. And ultimately, despite them being my personal dark horse pick of the tier 2 teams, they didn't quite make it this time, boys.
It's a shame as well, because I think that you can see Falcons have put in a big shift when it comes to prep for the major. I think they actually look like a pretty decent side at points. Misuta always there. I think for the rest of Falcons as well, there's, as you said, they're quite the dark horse. I think they've got potential to sort of sit in the bottom end of tier 1. And I think it's just a shame that this event, they don't make it through. I was gutted for them. Having casted the OG Outsiders game, Outsiders didn't look their best either. I thought that there was certain chance that Falcons could beat them. And as soon as you turn to that game and have a look maybe at the individual stats and the scores overall in that one, it definitely did hurt to see that those guys just second best all in all. Outsiders just look the better side, really. You know, always talk about James as an individual. I think he's had a great RMR so far. Norbert in this matchup popped off.
Yeah.
It's just sad, really, to see, because I think if Falcons had a slightly better day and Outsiders had a slightly worse day than they did, this goes entirely differently. It literally is just unlucky for Falcons that they got put against them, and they were the way they were.
I feel like they had some really hard matchups as well. Like they beat K23, then they have to play Ents, then they have to play OG. Like that's really rough. I feel like if matchups went a little bit differently, we could have seen them there 100%. I feel like even if they had, I don't know, potentially, well, if they had Vitalities, I know it's all season stuff, but if they had Vitalities matchup, their Fantasy Big Monte, like I feel like they just go through, to be honest. Like very, very impressed with how they're performing though. Like I was super impressed when I was watching the open qualifier with them, and I really like they do like contact controlled aggression on CT side to like really disrupt teams' momentum, and I feel like that's a big factor. I feel like MBK's brought a lot of experience, and I feel like Masuta's really thriving in this environment. So happy to see them doing well. They're not quite there yet, but it's one to watch out going forward.
Yeah, I agree with this entirely. I think they're on the edge of making it. I mean, it says it all by them being 2-3, but how Outsiders kind of owned them and played them really in that final series just tells a lot in terms of the experience, even though, of course, Norbert and Fame are new. But Outsiders reeked of a 3-2 team in this RMR. It has to be said. Like they did not look like a team that would be comfortable, but they would almost look like a team that would be guaranteed at the same time, simultaneously. Actually, this RMRB went probably I think it's my best prediction one of all of them. The only one I missed was OG because I thought there'd be a wildcard one. And in the end, there wasn't a wildcard one. All the teams that kind of were expected to go through did go through. The one I picked instead was Heat. They really disappointed me. It goes along with the discussion about, the French teams. There was that Heat versus Falcons game, which was a really important match to decide, who had the bragging rights, I guess, in the French scene, and Falcons edged that one. But yeah, Heat disappointed me, and one team's praises that didn't make it before we get into the qualifying teams that I have to sing is Sangal. I mean, I really wanted them to do well because I've seen them perform online. They did. Skrunk's been in the scene for like 8 years, and it makes you feel bad for him because it makes you think maybe this might be his final ever chance to make a major. Soulfly is an absolute king. I've brought him up already. I think I've watched him from the ESA Premier days. He was fantastic. This Sangal team, if they stick together, even after failing in this situation, I think there'll be a problem for anyone online.
I imagine there'll probably be another tier 2 team to watch out for. It does suck, but at the same time, I didn't think that there would be a team that was sort of in that conversation to make it in. I think RMRB was a much more predictable thing, so I haven't got mass amounts to say. To transition over to the Outsiders talk, obviously, is one of the teams that made it through. Trav, I think you summed it up pretty nicely. They look like a 3-2 team. They don't look great. They don't look terrible. They just are sort of there. And
they're always there, though, aren't they?
Yeah, it looks like they'll just stick there in that sort of sense. And it makes it very difficult to sort of measure this team up because it's like, well, what are the expectations? Are they going to win trophies? Are they going to do decent work to make it to the run? Are they going to make a decent run of the major? Like, I genuinely just don't know because they just look like they're there for me.
They'll get Legends and they'll bomb out round of 16. So how it always goes.
Fair enough, I guess.
I will say, by the way, the OG game that they played, honestly, could have gone either way. That was probably the most enjoyable best of 3 I've watched in my life. The final map, 29 rounds, OG. It was Flamesy and I think Nexa in a 2v3. Nexa holds a flash from CT, it blinds 2 of them, and Flamesy just rips heads off straight away. Nexa couldn't have been more poetic. He gets the final kill. Honestly, it was an awesome moment to see from OG. And so if we're going to transition on maybe from this Outsiders conversation, having beaten Heroic in a BO1, I thought that was pretty cool. And then harsh draw against Na'Vi. OG, though, they really surprised me this RMR, especially in that game against Outsiders, actually. The fact that they go 3-1, fair play to them. I think you've got to realize that this is a side that have also undergone massive change, massive structural reconfigurations. So I've not got enough words to say about OG, actually. I'm a massive fan, a really, really big fan, and I'll be holding that up until the major, because I'm actually one of the few teams that maybe, if you look at the matchups, they had an easy run into that 3-1, playing Mals and losing to them, Illuminar, then Falcons. But the Outsiders BO3 personally was enough to sway me completely. They did a really good job this event. And I'd also like to say to Heroic, having lost against Outsiders in the BO1, they also had a pretty easy run to the 3-1 stage. And then also Vitality, how easy their run was to the 3-1 stage. I got Fantasy and Monty and they lose to Big. Like, I don't know. I think some of the slots at the upper end of the sheet certainly not deserved, but that's how it goes sometimes, you know. And for the 3-1 teams, it's comfy business.
I mean, for the OG guys, like, they're always going to thrive in a Swiss format. You see how well they do at Blast, right, with the best of ones.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like OG, they are. What you got to consider is the fact that they've brought in Neofrag, they've brought in Fiku. Neofrag's got like new roles than he had to Sinners, so you kind of, people always going to get a little bit hyped about when he came over. You expect a little bit more from him individually, and he's finally just kind of adapting to his roles now. Like, I was very impressed with how he was conducting himself just as an individual during this RMR, and I like, just obviously you got the whole like Slapster meme with Dexter just kind of just absolutely twatting Flamesy's hand all the time. But like,
Oh yeah,
it's just the team cohesion. It's just what they look a lot better when they're on LAN. So I'm a believer. I think it's a very interesting one to watch for OG. I want to talk on Heroic just maybe because you kind of mentioned it. I just want to touch on them very briefly because yeah, they had a very good run. But I was so impressed in those seed and best of threes, especially against Vitality and the game against Big for qualification. They look legit. They look so good, and I feel like Yabby is really like getting there now, making inroads. You can kind of see why they picked him up. And we spoke to Cadian afterwards, and he was like, "Yeah, we're really impressed, and we're surprised at how far Yabby's come along in such a short space of time." And was also fortunate enough to speak to Yabby after the Vitality game, and he basically was like, "I've got so much more to show. I do these things in scrims. I'm like, I don't even know how I do them." So if we can hit that, if we can see that Yabby at the major, if he's peaking at the right time, if this team is peaking at the right time, remember that these guys are like back-to-back semi-finalists. They are my quote-unquote dark horse to kind of make it to the final. I feel like they are very sound at the moment.
For my money, Heroic are probably the strongest team coming out of this RMR. At the minimum RMRB, if not the European region in general, like, they just look fantastic. They have the results to back them up. They have one best of one loss, which is a best of one, so fair enough. And then the ratings, just as you mentioned, Yabby's the lowest rated player and he still looks utterly fantastic. Stown had an absolutely monstrous time. Kanian didn't. I think the eye test proves to be much better than what he had over in the numbers game. So right now, Heroic are on fucking fire. I think the only thing that would have made it more legit is had they made it 3-0, and again, it was one map that made the difference between that for me.
Yeah, exactly. I was critical of Heroic, and I didn't trust them at all in Pro League. I mean, I made a point, I think, in one of these pods to say that I honestly, they'd looked really rough since adding Yabby, even though I thought it was absolutely the right call. Well, finally, the right call seems to be working, and I fully agree. I mentioned, obviously, earlier, Zyphon, Roy, Nikodos, and Zyphon. Yabby, adding to that, I didn't actually mention Yabby, of course, as the other Copenhagen Flames member that's made the major, and Hooksy hasn't. Just another story that's pretty remarkable for him, and I think he fully deserves it, for sure.
All right, cool.
I'd also argue that that game against OG was pretty banging for third place, and that only speaks into what I was saying about OG. For Heroic as a team, they really delivered as well. I think we've got a pretty exciting major ahead of us from these European RMRs. And,
definitely.
I
Yeah.
think as well, something that I'd argue is I think that this RMR, even the big teams have had some pretty big upsets, right? And I think there's some serious wiggle room for the smaller teams, for the smaller fishes in the pond to actually to have a go at some of the big dogs. I think, off of Vitality's success in Pro League, the fact that they lose to Big in a BO1, it's BO1s in the main event as well. It's BO1s in every single stage up until elimination or qualification games. For Na'Vi, they didn't really get tested. For Ents, we're seeing a new look. For OG,
Yeah.
they've looked mighty good. Like in RMRB, I think there is a true statement to be made that actually it's all up in the air heading into this major. The challenger stage, I think we're going to thrive with.
I just want to actually quickly transition to talking about Ents real quick, because they are probably one of my favourite teams from this RMR, mostly because we were talking a little bit about the Sun Pius move and how he's going to fit into the roster. Well, this is the team, this is the tournament where he fucking came alive, and it paid off in the end of the day. Like, Sun Pius had some awkward times in Pro League, but for this particular tournament, like, he just looked completely lights out, gave him the 3-0. You talk about how Small Fry could potentially have great moments and a great position going into the major. I think Ents are the perfect example of that, boys.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was a bit worried about Ents as well. I mean, as you say, like Sun Pius and Valda, they were the two players to add that I thought were the perfect additions. And they struggled a little bit and didn't look too consistent. And then I think they found their stride. And I'm very happy to see that, because an Ents that has had chances before on lands, win events with different rosters, and I think they got close in Dallas and stuff like that. But now they've got this team, I think it might be enough to push them through to the other level. I think honestly, I do believe this team makes major playoffs for me, but maybe not further than that.
I think they're a dark horse for the trophy. I think major playoffs will be sort of like the target to hit for them. They just, I think the RMR is proof in the pudding that they can do some decent work, and I'm just excited to see whether or not they can capitalize upon that. The big series was really confident. I just think that just in general, like, Ents have done some real smart business with the organization, and it proves not only in terms of their financial records, but also in terms of the results that they're producing in the service. So I just have to give them nothing but praise. Like, again, I'm a really big fan of this team. I'm so happy that they made the RMR run that they did.
I speak a more topical point about Ents is that they came top 4 in the last major, right? So for them getting that slot back, it's always going to be fun to see them get back into business. And I would say after a very shocking run at Pro League as well, this 3-0 has completely caught me off guard. I think, in fact, I may have said it on podcast. Maybe it was just a thought I had in my head, is that after what we saw in Pro League, I was going to be very surprised to even see them maybe put up a performance like they did. I think that maybe after that, you can make the argument that they're prepping for the major and for the RMRs rather than for Pro League itself. But the fact that they come off the back of this, they play both French teams, they make it look good, they play Big in a best of 3, which, by the way, I'd like a little bit of a conversation about Big as a team as a whole.
Sure.
Ents did a really good job. And I wanted to talk about Big a little bit as well, because we really see them struggle in the best of 3s, but in the best of 1s, yet again, they're a team that pull off upsets, right? I think you look at maybe the Sangal game, it's expected, but against Vitality on Dust 2, the fact that they beat them there, I'm mega impressed with this Big side. And again, it's kind of like got me intrigued again as to see how good they do in this major cycle, because sure, we're seeing Sin maybe not find his footing specifically in this matchup, but he certainly did an okay job on the short notice that he had playing for this side. For the players up top as well, you're seeing big numbers. Tabs and Sis and both having a pretty good time in this series. I think Tabson as well was one of the best players in my opinion through this RMR, because he looked unbelievable. Stats just didn't lie. I think he had a great event, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, one thing you gotta.
Go on, BDog.
Everyone talks more.
Go on,
I was
BDog.
gonna say the thing is with Big, it's like when you go into an RMR cycle, they're going to be the team that's going to be anti-stratting everyone. They're going to come prepared, especially in these best of 1 scenarios. They always make a really good run, either in the RMR or the Challenger stage or Legend stage. Like they're very good for like their chops basically. And I feel like you take into account the fact that you haven't got Favin in, who's one of the star players for Big. You bring in Sin. I said it. I think I said it on a podcast a while ago. When Big made that Tizian Keto swap, I was calling for Sin to actually come in instead and just replace him, because I was very
Agreed.
impressed with what I've seen from Sin,
Yeah.
and I'm really glad that he performed and he lived up to the hype that
Yeah.
I really had expected of him, and I feel like he can do well in this big roster just permanently. I feel like he is the natural keto replacement when he eventually does dog again, and then they need to make a replacement. Um, and I feel like that
I
team's like
agree.
quite legit.
I agree because Sin obviously played really, really well at Philadelphia, which was obviously, I believe, one of his first like main
Yeah.
international travel lands. So I know it's Philadelphia, but still. And yeah, I think the one thing that the reason I can't predict anything to do with Big here is that has there been any confirmation at all whether they're going to continue with Sin into the major or if they're going back to Fathom? Like I don't know.
I feel it'd be so harsh if they drop Sin after
Yeah,
they
It
if
would
I'm not
be.
mistaken, I did see Sin tweet about his stickers being in the game. And
Right.
for me, I don't think you can have six stickers in a team. I
No,
don't
you
ever
can't. You
remember
can't.
that happening. So if Sin gets his sticker, I'm pretty certain that they're going to have to stick with him for the rest of the major.
All right.
And
That
it would
makes
make the most
sense.
sense to me as well, because you've done a lot of prep at the LAN, you know, like in Pracking in Malta, or you know, maybe even online before that as well. Certainly would have been him that's involved in the process. And maybe the role changes sculpted Big a little differently, and maybe that's why they've done so well. Um, yeah, I can't argue with how well the big side did, and I actually agree with you, Brandon, massively. Sins really surprised me. I think he was one that a lot of us kept our eye on heading into this year as well, right? And
Yeah.
he's certainly living up to that, man. He's certainly proven himself as an individual. As you said, whether he stays in a more permanent slot when, you know, the eventual day does come where they realize that he's a pretty good pickup, or is this where it's like another Shuey example, or you know, like in a Mal's NXT embodiment where another team scopes him out and they're like, do you know what? With enough work, with our resources, he could be a good pickup. And maybe that's the route they take. Either way, though, Sin for me, even though he was like far from the top of the sheets, he's someone that I want to keep my eye on in this major as well, because I think he's got so much to show for.
Indeed, I think there's a lot of potential in what Big can do, but they are very similarly to the case of that hit and miss team. They did make it in 3-2, and of course they lost the best of threes to Ents and Heroic. So there were those situations where it was obviously the case that they aren't still one of the top teams in the world at the moment, and I guess that's fair enough to a greater or lesser extent. But we can entertain the conversation about Big for ages, but we are genuinely out of time, guys. So I'm gonna have to push towards the end of the show. Is there anything else just to close out RMRB? If there's anything else you guys want to discuss, I'll just open the floor. Retro.
I want to say maybe, I don't know. I think it's going to be a bit interesting. I'd like to say maybe as well some of the lower end teams. Illuminar getting a win was pretty cool to see. Obviously, they replaced benched heroes at the very last second. They had the least time out of everyone. They took a series off of Fantasy, fair enough, and they got two very hard draws in Navi and OG, losing out to Sangal. Already had a bit of a chat about Sangal. One other side that maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion about is Mouse. Because they're a team that, okay, sure, maybe only just scraped through. They had a best of 3 against Vitality and a best of 1 against Navi. They won every other game. It was a K23 Ancient. It was an OG Vertigo as well. I'll tell you what, they did a decent job this RMR, and maybe the scoreline doesn't reflect how well I think they did on a personal level.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Mouse as well. I mean, just for me, my personal thoughts on that is I honestly thought for a second Sangal were going to beat them, to be honest. I mean, obviously Mouse, most people probably would have put them to go through. Lots of people didn't know how it would work with the youngsters like Xertion and everything, and all that, like how they removed Bemis in the way they did. But yeah, I think I put them to go through, as I say, I think most people did, but they did worry me. And to squeak through 3-2, a bit like Big did, it means that in the future, I think once they do, we do go to the challenger stage, I'm actually not sure whether I'm going to put them to go through that stage or not, because I think they are capable of losing against like a Sangal type team, you know? So I'm worried. I'm impressed they made it, but for a second, I really thought that Sangal game was a 50-50 going into map 3.
I feel like I just kind of echo sentiments. I think you take the results that Mouse have a pinch of salt, and I feel like you gotta temper expectations a bit with this team. The fact that they've got so many youngsters that have never made a major before, it's the biggest tournament they've ever played in their careers. Just coming from the Academy League as well, you throw them into Cologne, they did really well. You bring Exertion in, you're now playing an RMR. You've got the coach that's got experience with them. I feel like, look, it's a good look for Mouse. I feel like they're not going to be as prepared for like the tier 2 space as they were against the tier 1. Look at how well they performed against Vitality, and then compare and contrast that with Sangao. And I feel like you've now got the time. You know, you're definitely making the major. You're going to want to put up your best show, and they're going to be prepared. Like, I feel like they're actually going to do quite well at the major. Just my opinion, but it's these tier 2 like teams that will catch them off guard. If it's going to be anything, it's going to be them rather than Mouse's undoing against tier 1, because they look very solid always against tier 1.
Well, gentlemen, we are out of time at this stage, so at this moment, I just want to get some final thoughts about the RMRs going into the major. We'll go clockwise. Retro.
I don't know, mate. If you can drive a car, maybe you can make a prediction. No,
So
I'm
not you
actually,
then.
Nah, yeah, I'm really excited. I think my big take is, I'll tell you what, I'll try and start the pattern. I reckon it's Fnatic 3-0. That's the team I'm going to be putting my 3-0 slot. Greyhound 0-3. And I think a lot of the European teams are going to fill up the rest. I'm looking at your OGs, your C9s, your bigs, maybe even a BNE in the mixer. I reckon Gamer Legion make it through as well. That's where I'll stand heading into the Challenger stage. There you go. Those are my big ones. Fnatic 3-0, Gamer Legion 3.
Trav?
Brandon, you go first. I've got a longer one. So
Go on, BDog.
Do you want me to be spicy with it?
Yeah, go on.
All right, EG30.
That's not spicy. That's just fucking funny.
You know what? We'll stick with it. Greyhound 03. 0-0 Nation make it through the Challenger stage, and we're gonna have a big name that doesn't quite do it, but I don't know who. I've already given some craziness. I don't want to do it.
Okay, so for me, I'm actually going to agree with Retro for once and say Fnatic 3-0, Greyhound 0-3. That's something I'm going to do.
I wanted to do that as well, but I thought it was
Cloud9.
boring, by the way.
Okay,
I think Fnatic will go 3-0.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm
gonna
EG instead.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? It is why not to be fair. I
Went
think
3-0
EG could make
RMR.
it. I think EG could make it. Yeah, I genuinely think EG could make it, but obviously, like, it's sort of
Not in 3-0. Not in 3-0.
No, but not in 3-0. Yeah. Imperial or 0-0 Nation, I hope one of them makes it at least. So, you know, I mean, if just looking at the Challenger stage now, the problem is in the Challenger stage, you might have the nightmarish situation for Brazil where Furia, 0-0 Nation, and Imperial all don't make it. Furia have been wobbly, haven't they, lately? Like, they made it fine, but, you know, you never know with them. They can be hot, they can blow hot and cold. So, I'm gonna pick Fnatic 3-0, Greyhound 0-3. I'm gonna go and say a little bit wild that I think maybe BNE and 0-0 Nation make it, to be honest. I think it's a possibility. I think OG make it as well. I think they look pretty good. And finally, I'm going to pick the IHC get one win like usual to annoy everyone.
For the people
who pick them 0-3. And I think outsiders don't make it for me.
Yeah, sure. Why not? We'll roll with that. Okay. I'm not going to give my predictions because I'm going to be hosting
Of course you're
another
not,
show.
because you're the host.
Because I'm the host, and I'll be doing another show about the majors themselves in the build-up to the majors. So we'll get a chance to flesh those out and possibly bring you guys back to officiate those in the pick and predictions. But that'll be something to discuss in the future. For today, we are 4 minutes away from having to cut everybody off and get out of here. So I just want to thank everyone for joining me, guys. BDog especially, because you're cutting it real fine with what else you've got going on in your life. So thanks for coming on, guys. It's been a fucking pleasure. I'll give you a chance to plug your shit. We'll go with BDog first, because I think you've got something coming up in a few minutes, right?
Yeah, I do, but that's not.
Oh, it's not esports. Okay,
No,
I thought you were on for a show. My bad.
No, I have a doctor's appointment.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
But we're not plugging that. We can plug my Twitter. It's at BDogCSGO. There you go. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
Awesome, Trav.
At TravCS, occasional banger, whether it's by luck or by judgment, I get them. Don't ask me how or why. Refresh, I'm sorry for burning your team. It's all in love. I love Sprout. At TravCS, follow me.
Retro, when's your next driving test?
2nd of December, mate. Eat shit. I've already got it booked in, honestly, man. Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Here's some coal and a fail.
Yeah. No, at _retro, I guess, on the old socials. Pleasure for having me again. Thank you very much, Jay, for having us on. It is a good one. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say other than go watch the major. And yeah, there you go. I've got,
Awesome.
oh, there you go. One more thing. I've got one banger. I know how it feels to be Trav CS on Twitter. I had one banger with the Onipixel roast in the RMRs. I think that's got to be the most viral clip of them all in the RMRs, by the way. So
I was proud of you for that one, Retro.
I'll take it. Mate,
All
I
good.
saw him watching the stream and I was like, oh, it's got to happen. It's got to happen.
All right. Well,
I sent you a banger on Discord to use, Ryan. You haven't yet.
No, well, there's no way that's
Timing's everything. Timing is everything.
The timing's gone. The timing's gone.
right. Okay, boys, it's time to get out of here. We will be back for another post show, or maybe a pre-show, in fact, for the major. I think the next post show will probably be for Blast Premier Showdown. So we'll be sure to update you guys on Twitter about when we're going to do that show, and maybe we'll see some of these boys back here for the time being. Though, if you don't join me again, thanks for coming, and thanks for, of course, providing your opinions. As for everyone watching, of course, you can still find this show if you've missed any part of it on YouTube when the VOD goes out later on tonight. And I've been working on getting it on Spotify as well, so hopefully we'll have the audio version so you can take the show on the go and listen to it whenever you do please. For the time being, I want to thank you so much for watching and for listening. On behalf of myself, the EternalJay, and all my co-panelists and commentators that, of course, covered the RMR over the course of the last week. We'll see you back here next time for the next post show, but until that point, we'll see you very soon.